This is chapter 18, and the title chapter of the title is Remember Me, personalizing the motet in the Renaissance. Okay, so we're going to talk a bit about a cappella. What is that? Without instruments. It could be a solo or an ensemble group that's singing without accompaniment. And the cantus firmus is Latin, and the term literally means fixed song fixed. And where a melody is borrowed from chant, and it's the source of the piece of music. In the organum, where we had the tenor singing, it would have that one part and the other part was improvised. Well, you could say that's the cantus firmus, that part that represents, that is actual music from the chant. And Josquin des Prez, we're going to pay attention to who he was and listen to one of his pieces of music that is a motet. And so this chapter is again in the unit that's on sacred choral music. So Josquin wrote secular music and he wrote sacred music. And he wrote choral music. Well, and so it's not for solo voice, it's for an ensemble. And the piece of music is a great example of varied textural styles, where there's polyphonic music and homorhythmic music. If you remember what that is, where you mean the same rhythm vertically. So Josquin is in the Renaissance. We say the Renaissance starts in 1450 to 1600, when we have the invention of opera. And of course, polyphony is going great guns in the Middle Ages, but it's really takes off in the Renaissance period. To compare the humanism, what is humanism? We talk about that frequently. And we say the Greeks had a humanistic approach, and the Middle Ages did not. So what is humanism? Where we rely on reason, right? In scientific inquiry, human issues are involved, the individual order. Humanism, an outlook or system of thought that attached prime importance to human rather than divine or supernatural matters. Humanistic beliefs stress the potential value and goodness of human beings, emphasize common human needs, and seek solely rational ways of solving human problems. Humanism, a Renaissance cultural movement which turned away from medieval scholasticism and revived interest in ancient Greek and Roman thought. The noun, humanism. This is interesting that this writer, Lord Acton, who lived to 1834-1902, refers to the two principal divides of history as being the antiquity and the Middle Ages. So antiquity is the Greeks and the Romans, and the Middle Ages. And there's a stark difference between the approaches those two diverse philosophies. Says this is the great dualism that runs through our society. These are the two civilizations that have preceded us, basically antiquity and the Middle Ages. So in the Renaissance, we had a number of different examples of sacred choral music, multi-voiced hymns, motets, polyphonic settings of the Mass. We'll study the Mass when we do functional sacred music, because the Mass serves a purpose, has a beginning, middle, and an end kind of a thing. And the music follows those prayers. So again, a lot of the early Renaissance music continues this use of the cantus firmus, a pre-existing melody that's generally the chant. And so the example of music we're going to listen to does exactly that. A lot of imitation takes place and is the style of the early Renaissance. And we'll hear that in the example we're going to listen to. The harmonies are much richer and sweeter to our ears than the late Middle Ages that often sounds hollow to us. And note the beginning chord of the piece of music we can listen to is full and rich with harmony, and the last chord of the piece, the Amen, they sing it and it's just in fifths and it's real hollow, and contrast between those two harmonies. The piece, and we generally in the Renaissance, there's a more use of the duple meter. If you remember, I said in the Middle Ages, the perfect meter was considered 3 because of the Trinity, and imperfect was duple. Well, whether it's imperfect or not, it still can be a lot of fun. So so there's an exploration of a duple meter, more of that in the Renaissance. This amazing painting, right, is full of perspective. And you look at how the apostles are positioned, is very telling of what's going on here. A contrast between art in the Middle Ages and art in the Renaissance. The art in the Middle Ages, we have these flat levels here and another flat level, and with their frontal portraits. There's no side examination. Over here, right, we have the beautiful profile, and it's an example of humanism, where this is this Middle Ages philosophy. So this is the love and the tenderness that's taking place here is exhibited in the painting. So this is an example of humanism. What is a motet? Well, 13th century, we go back to that from the organum tradition, where upper voices were added to a cantus firmus. And of course, we said that was the first example of a counterpoint. A motet is the first example of counterpoint, where it's not just improvised, the upper voices. And we had secular motets and sacred motets. And it's real curious that you have two sets of texts being sung at the same time, where the cantus firmus is sung in Latin, and the upper voices added new text, often in the vernacular. Two different languages going on at the same time. Yeah, I can understand that. And see, this is one of the complaints about the early Renaissance. Later, they complained that we can't understand the words, and so a change is made. But early on, I don't know how you figure out what the text is. Maybe look at the words by themselves. Hopefully, there's a handout. And several texts, sometimes in different vernacular languages going on at the same time over a Latin cantus firmus, sometimes performed on instruments where that cantus firmus would be sung and played at the same time, a long tones and the other parts fitting in. Written in counterpoint now, so it's more complicated and a lot of imitation. So again, humanism, comparison, Middle Ages, Renaissance. Renaissance religious belief shifted to a more personal connection with the divine. Medieval painting presented life through symbolism. Renaissance preferred realism. Renaissance painters discovered the landscape, created the illusion of distance, focused on physical loveliness. Josquin lived 1450 to 1520. He wrote, it tells us over here, he wrote 100 motets, 17 masses, which we'll study in another unit, right? And he wrote French chansons, which is secular music, and Italian secular songs. So he wrote lots of different kinds of music. And so regarding the motet, it says used in the Mass and other religious services, but I'm not sure kind of how at one point they're put in the Mass, or if it's just like, oh, let's find time here and do the motet here. This would be appropriate. We need to kill time because the priest has to change clothes or something. I don't know. Maybe something like that. And so it combined newly written texts with prescribed prayers. And this was one of the challenges that the composers felt they liked, right? Because they had the ability to combine newly written texts of praise with prescribed prayers was part of the appeal of the motet for composers who were able to demonstrate their individual creativity through choice of text as well as musical invention. Oh, cool. I'm going to put my text in there. Josquin, you always see the same picture. Maybe this is the only picture existed. I don't know, but with the hat. 1450 to 1521. He really was like the leader of the pack at the time, and because the printing press was invented like 1455, so when he was an adult, the music was being copied and sent throughout Europe. And so this is one of the reasons he was such an influence, is people could study his music and learn from it. But he also, it was from Northern Europe, but he worked in Italy, in Milan, in Ferrara. He worked in Rome for the papal choir, writing music. He went back to France. A lot of his music has this humanism. Again, he wrote quite a bit of music, mostly sacred music. And about the piece we're going to hear, Ave Maria Virgo Serena, starts, and there's a lot of imitation. It starts with a chant, Ave Maria, and then you hear somebody else, Ave Maria. Anyway, it's 4 times. It's pretty cool. That's imitation. And it's in Latin. After you hear all this polyphony going on, take note that it's hard to hear the words because people are on different syllables at the same time. And then note that there are sections of polyphony and there are sections of homorhythmic music where it's the same rhythm, everybody's singing together. It's not polyphony and different rhythms. They all on the same syllable when they say Ave, or whatever the case may be. And as well, I noticed in the book it says, right? It says the high voices engage in a dialogue with low voices, and imitative textures alternate with homorhythmic settings in which all voices move together rhythmically. And the piece opens with a musical reference to a pre-existing chant for the Virgin. Oh, and then it ends with this, remember me, this is the name of the chapter. And I ask, well, why is the chapter named that? And because it is that back to that picture with the Virgin Mary and the child, and this is the same kind of thought as is remember me. So that's the line that Josquin puts in there, and it's a very example of humanism. So much of Josquin's music was published. He became the first composer to become genuinely famous in his lifetime because of the printing press around 1455. So we said, as a result of the printing press, his contemporaries, Josquin's contemporaries, were able to study and learn from the example of his music with a speed that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago because of the dissemination of the information. The printing press was just as an important advancement to humanity as a computer, maybe more. So let's listen to the piece of music here, the motet by Josquin, Ave Maria, Virgo Serena. Ave Maria.
So